So before I start the show, I would just like to apologize. I don't think my microphone was working this whole time. I'm not going to name names, but somebody unplugged the microphone. And I don't think we plugged it back in all the way. So anyways, please don't come at me with, your audio sucks. I know it sucks, but just enjoy the ride. Hey guys, Colleen here. Thank you so much for submitting all of your questions for today's question and answer video. I'm really excited to take a look at everything you guys want to know about me, about amps. It's going to be cool. 2023 is come to an end. This is the final video of this year, and I'm really excited to bring you guys more videos in 2024. Right, Hank? Yeah, he's excited too. Before I begin, I would like to let you guys know I'm actually going to be restarting my Patreon page. I'll include a link below, and there will be an extended version of this Q&A video there. But subscribe to my Patreon for behind the scenes videos, things that I don't post publicly to YouTube, all that kind of stuff. I have a really fun time doing Patreon, so I'm excited to get that back up and running. I would also like to thank the sponsor of this video, DistroKid. DistroKid helps musicians upload their music to all major streaming platforms, and musicians get to keep 100% of the royalties. We love musician-friendly services. Right, Hank? Viewers of my channel get 30% off. I'll post the link below. It's distrokid.com/VIP/Fazio, so go check it out and get your music uploaded. But first, before I begin the video, I'm gonna go make myself a little drink. I mean, it is New Year's and all. My favorite cocktail is a dirty martini, so that's a little something about me. Let's go make one. Alright guys, welcome to the first ever Q&A video. I'm going to answer as many questions as I can, and like I said, the questions that I don't get to, I'll be posting an extended cut on my Patreon. So, this is in no particular order. We have a little bit of tech questions, some personal questions, so stick along for the ride. If I don't answer your question, I will definitely do a part 2 of this at some point. So, first question. Other than guitar, what instruments do you play or would you like to play? So, I started playing guitar first when I was 7 years old, and then I switched to bass when I was in my early teenage years, and I played bass primarily all through high school. When I was in bands back in Chicago, I played bass. And then in the recent years, like the last few years, I switched back to guitar. I've also played banjo and mandolin in the past. Oh yeah, I also played clarinet in marching band and symphonic band in high school. I'd love to learn how to play the keyboards, organ. Would love that. I would love to have an organ in the house one day. Question number 2, when you install, inevitably, I'm sure we will do this, install a tube hi-fi into the Econoline. For those of you who don't know, the Econoline is the van that we have. It's 1986, and it had a little feature in the last demo video. What will you base it on, and how will you ruggedize it? We've actually been talking about installing a really cool sound system in the van. There's already a CB radio in there, and I would love to build a tube amp to power the sound system in there. Would definitely have to be on some sort of suspension. That will be a fun thing to mess around with in the future. We also want to install a crazy number of speakers. The goal for the van is to be all wood paneled inside, very hunter's cabin. How often does toxic masculinity try to undermine your skilled craftsmanship? You know, I'm lucky. Everybody's, for the most part, is super respectful to me. I think when I first started out, I have a distinct memory of somebody who didn't believe that I had fixed their equipment, and my mentor at the time, Mike Del Valle, he basically told the guy what's up. And again, I've given Mike Del Valle so many shout outs in my videos, but he gave me so much confidence at the start of my journey in amp repair. But you know, I think like over time my confidence has really grown, and so if I get a twinge of any weirdness, I kind of shut it down right away. I think the worst of it is in the YouTube comments, but even then it's not really that bad. I think that if somebody's gonna be kind of a a-hole to me, they're probably gonna be an a-hole to a lot of other people too. It's not just me. But anyways, next question. Thank you guys for all being really cool and respectful. What books helped you with learning to do what you do? Well, great question. I actually get this question a lot. So let me show you guys some of my favorite books. Sir. All right, so I pulled a few books that I've loved having with me through my journey. The first one is the Electric Guitar Amplifier Handbook by Jack Darr. This is one of the earlier prints of it. I know that there are definitely updated prints that are kind of in a bigger textbook size. Okay, so this one I have is the first edition, third printing, 1967. And I love this because it's a really good balance of technical and also lingo for beginners who don't necessarily have the technical vocabulary yet. So this book is really great. Again, Electric Guitar Amplifier Handbook by Jack Darr. The Tube Amp book by Aspen Pittman is another really good one. It has tons of schematics in it. I like this book a lot because like I said, it has a lot of schematics in it, and it also touches upon like a lot of amp companies in particular, Fender, Marshall, Orange. So that one's really good. And then this one, I need to get this guy tattooed on me, by the way, but it's How to Service Your Own Tube Amp by Tom Mitchell. This one is definitely more back to basics, which I love. This book I think was probably targeted towards the consumer of tube amps. People who just want to learn how to maintain their own amps. So it's a really great introduction. So yeah, those are 3 books that I highly recommend. And there's so many books out there, so I would say just kind of try out different ones and see which you understand better and which speak to you more. Are your long-term goals more in the realm of amp building or amp repair or amp YouTubing? That's a good question, and I do get the question a lot. Am I going to be building my own amps? And the answer to that is yes. When I first got into this, I actually wanted to start by building my own amps. The repair side really took over quickly, so I've been rolling with that. But 2024, there are going to be some opportunities for you to get a custom amp by me. I'm planning on releasing a base model amp and some other fun odds and ends, so stay tuned for that. But I'll always be repairing. Even if I start limiting my repair intake, I will always be repairing because I absolutely love doing that. What makes a guitar amp reliable? Any modern amps that we might see still kicking in 50 years? That's a good question. With guitar amps, tube amps specifically, a lot of the times serviceability promotes reliability. So if an amp is fairly straightforward and easy to service, that's not for dogs. If an amp is like fairly easy to service, everything's laid out, that is going to be easy to maintain. Things that don't promote reliability are amps that use printed circuit boards where the traces are super thin. If the circuit board gets really hot, it can burn traces and cause issues that aren't necessarily worth fixing. So I guess the short answer to that question is high quality parts, serviceable layout, serviceable everything. And yeah, I think that those are the two big things. And then in terms of amps that we might see still kicking in 50 years that are modern, I would say Fender reissues. A lot of, Fender Deluxe and Twin reissues are made really, really well. And they're one of the few modern amps that I will service. Okay, when you remove the death cap from a Bassman, do you remove the big solder glob? So for those of you who don't know, old Fender amps and a lot of old amps in general have the death cap. It connects from the line to ground, and typically the ground connection is soldered directly to the chassis with one of those big old irons that can solder to the chassis. So it leaves a big solder glob. Typically I don't really remove it. I'll just cut out the death cap. If it's really sloppy, maybe I'll remove the solder, but otherwise I just kind of cut the death cap out. Somebody asked, hello, I incorporated a choke in my latest DIY build. Does it have polarity? Chokes can be connected either way. Chokes have 2 leads coming out, and it's just like a resistor. You really can connect it either way. Favorite brand of boutique amps? I will definitely give a shout out to Benson amps. They're great. I've serviced many of them. They're super easy to service. Everything's hand wired using terminal strips, and they sound great. They're really durable. I know so many people who tour with them. So shout out to Benson. Is an aluminum chassis acceptable for a new build, or is steel always the best choice? I've built some prototypes with aluminum chassis just because they're a little easier to drill out, but I definitely prefer steel overall for all my builds going forward. I will be using steel. It's kind of a night and day difference how durable the steel can be. We've been playing around with using Hammerite paint on our steel chassis, and it looks so cool. But the goal is always maximum durability and reliability. Do you work on solid state amps? Not as much anymore. The solid state amps I'll take in are old acoustics. I'm working on an acoustic 370 right now. PVs, 70s and 80s era PVs, I love working on. So there are definitely a few exceptions, but primarily just tube. You mentioned you are half Italian. What else is in the mix? So yeah, I'm 50% Italian. My dad is 100% Italian. My mom is German and Irish primarily, so that's also mixed in there, probably some other random stuff. But my name Colleen is Irish, and then my last name's very Italian, so yeah, good mix there. Have you ever been electrocuted? Yes, many times. Especially when I was first starting out, that's kind of how you learn. Thankfully, I've never been electrocuted badly enough to really knock me over. It takes the wind out of you, but lately it happens less and less. If I'm being lazy and not being as careful as I should be, then it's more prone to happening. If I am oh, this cap's discharged or whatever, or forget that an amp is still plugged in, which happens. I think those mistakes happen when I'm hours and hours and hours into a repair that might be a little frustrating, and then I kind of lose my rigidity for safety. But overall, it's definitely few and far between these days. What's your position on modding versus maintaining originality of vintage equipment? That's a great question. I don't do a ton of mods. There are certain ones I'll do, slowing the tremolo, for instance, or deepening the tremolo, especially in Princeton's. I'll modify the negative feedback resistor. I'll do basic mods. What I won't do is add a gain stage or anything that requires kind of some redesign and some really big changes. It's funny though, I do have a drip edge Bassman that somebody gifted to me, and it is so modified. It had to have been modded in like the 80s or 90s, but they added like 2 gain stages and a master volume, and it absolutely rips. Something like that, it's like I'm not going to go ahead and return it back to stock. I'm just going to use it for what it is, because whoever did it right. But yeah, I mean, I'll like play around with my own stuff, but when it comes to clients, it's just pretty much the basic stuff. How did you get into repairing amps? So I do get asked this a lot also. I got into it, long story short. I got a job at this audio repair shop in Woodridge, Illinois called Deltronics. And I had the interest in me already for learning how to like build and fix amps. And I started there as their secretary, and and I would like take in all the units, do all the customer interaction, call with estimates, all that stuff. So I really got deep into the audio industry right away. And the owner, Mike Del Valle, my king, my mentor, he built me a workbench next to his and started throwing me in the trenches. And I am forever grateful for that, because he believed in me and supported me and encouraged me without any sort of doubt. So that really helped me, because as we all know, I'm sure a lot of us have felt imposter syndrome in any industry. I also had taken some classes at the Chicago School of Guitar Making. They teach guitar setup classes, guitar building classes, amp repair, amp building classes, all that stuff. So that was also a really good introduction. I worked at Deltronics for a few years and then moved out here to LA, and I was working with a guy, Andy Arrowhead. He owns Revamp. They're in Oakland, California now, but when he was still in LA, I worked for him for a few years, and that was also invaluable experience because he was really focused on guitar amps in general, whereas at Deltronics, they repair everything, all audio stuff. So it was a little bit of a deep dive with Andy, and that was a great experience. And then I went independent a few years ago, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago now, and have just been doing my thing. Learn as I go, I learn every day, but that's basically how I got into it. How close do I need to get to a capacitor's rated voltage? This is a good question. So for example, you see like a 100 microfarad capacitor at 50 volts. You can use 100 at 100, 100 at 500, 100 at 1000. Those caps will definitely get bigger, but yeah, it's safe to use anything above the rated voltage for capacitors. What was the greatest challenge you faced in your profession, and what advice would you give to other young women who want to follow in your footsteps? I love this question. Let's start with the first part. What was the greatest challenge you faced in your profession? I think the greatest challenge has been learning, especially as I've gotten to be on my own and I don't have somebody there all the time to ask questions to. The resources are quite limited. I think that you have to really be into researching, whether it be online, reading books, finding somebody who's willing to mentor you, getting your hands dirty. There's so many aspects to kind of learning about this. But I think overall, the greatest challenge is probably the lack of resources. I do wish that analog circuitry was taught more these days. It's more digital circuitry in school, but you know, finding the resources has definitely been a challenge. I think also running a business has been a challenge in general. I have my associate's degree. I got my associate's degree in art back in Illinois, and I didn't go to college for business, or I didn't go to college and get a bachelor's degree. So I, you know, just kind of have been learning as I go, and I think that's been a huge challenge. But the growth in the last few years has been exponential, and I'm just always open to growing and learning more. I've made tons and tons and tons of mistakes, but I think what matters at the end of the day is that you just keep going and you stay open-minded, and those are, I think, the most important things. So second part of the question, what advice would I give to other young women who want to follow in my footsteps? I would say go for it. You're badass. You can do it. Literally, if it's this or anything else, just do it. I think the best advice anybody ever gave me was fake it till you make it. And I've carried that advice with me for a long time, but what that means to me is just do the thing. Just try it out, do it. If people give you negative feedback off the bat, don't let that discourage you. I got negative feedback. People who were in the industry told me not to do it, but I didn't really listen to them, and I just did it because I believed that I could and I really wanted to. If you have the drive, follow that drive. What do you recommend for somebody wanting to get into working on amps? This is another question I get a lot. So in addition to getting some books and stuff like that, I would recommend building a kit. Mojo Tone and other companies sell amp kits. You can build amps like a Champ, Deluxe, even Bassman, Tweed kits. I built a 5E3 Deluxe. That was the first amp I ever built from a kit. And that really helps you develop soldering skills, understand how components are related, wiring skills, all that stuff. I would recommend. And also, if you live in an area where there is some sort of audio repair shop, go talk to them. See if they are willing to take you on as a mentor. I know so many people in the audio repair industry who are going into their 60s and 70s, and their biggest thing, their biggest fear is that this information and this skill won't be passed down. All of the people I know in this industry are bursting at the seams, busy with stuff. So this industry needs people. There's such a demand for audio repair, whether it be your vintage stereo record player or your vintage tube amp or your old synthesizer. There is a huge need for people to learn how to do this stuff. So I would say if you are a visual learner, hands-on learner, go talk to people, build a kit, just get your hands dirty, and see what happens. Next question, how old are you? I'm 29 going on 30. I will be turning 30 this year, 2024, on August 19th. The big 3-0. Do you often burn yourself with your soldering iron? Yes. The smell of burnt skin is very familiar to me. The smell of burnt hair is very familiar to me. I would say I burn my hair more often than I do myself, because I'm leaning over and don't realize that my hair is in the way. But at times I'll definitely nick my hand or something. I'm used to it at this point. I kind of have a high tolerance for heat at this point, which is kind of funny, but yeah. So yes, I do. Are you super busy repairing amps? Do customers ship amps to you, or are you a walk-in business? I am super busy repairing amps. I'm very fortunate to have tons of really cool old amps coming in. Primarily it is local business. I work out of my home shop, so it's by appointment only. I would love to have a storefront one day. Probably within the next few years. That's a goal of mine. So at that point it would be walk in, you can come in, maybe demo some amps and stuff. But I do from time to time take shipped in amps. So if you have an amp that you would like to have worked on and you don't have a technician in your area, shoot me an email. It's kind of a case-by-case basis and depends on my current workload, but yeah. Primarily local LA people, tons of musicians, studios, even prop houses. It's been really fun. Do you have an apprentice? I do not have an apprentice. I think right now I'm still kind of figuring out my business. I'm trying to figure out whether I want to focus on builds heavier and repairs less, or repairs, builds, whatever. The scales are still tipping. So I think one day I would love to have an apprentice, probably when I have a storefront. I would love to teach more classes. My friend and fellow technician, Pat Kaufman out of New York, we've taught a class together out there in New York, and it was awesome. It was so fun. So I want to do more classes like that, maybe out there, over here. So stay tuned for some of that information. How is the new shop working out? What is better about the new shop than the old shop? So this is my 4th shop in Los Angeles in the last 5 years. So I've moved quite a bit, primarily because I've been outgrowing my shops. I've had shops that were the size of a glorified walk-in closet. And then I've had shops that were like 1 to 2 car garages. This shop is a 3-car garage, and it has plenty of space. I can walk, I have tons of shelving, I'm able to like keep things organized. So the shop is working out really well. I'm located in Tahunga, California, which is a little bit north of like Glendale or Los Angeles. It takes me about 20 minutes to get anywhere I would want to hang out in LA. So it's kind of like a nice out of the way, but still fairly close. It's quiet, we're by the foothills, so I really like this location. I would say out of all of my shops, I miss my Eagle Rock shop just because Eagle Rock is such a great location and I love that neighborhood, but the shop is really well insulated. A lot of my other shops were like in garages built in the 30s. So this garage is like all cinder block, and it stays cool in the summer and stays fairly warm in the winter. What is your favorite song to play? It always varies. I would say my favorite genres to play are like 70s rock, country, a little bit of blues, but yeah, rock, southern rock, country are my favorite genres. Anything and everything that has guitar riffs that I like and that are fun to play. Last question. There are a few more questions that I have on here, but I'm going to save those for the Patreon video. But the last question is how did you get into music? Which is a very special question to me. I can think all the way back to when I was 6 or 7 years old, and my Uncle Joe, he has always had guitars. He's always had music around him, and I guess when I was a kid, I picked up his guitar and wanted to like kind of figure out how to play it. So for Christmas that year, I got a little tiny guitar, and it was a little Stella acoustic guitar. It was white, probably like this big, and my parents signed me up for guitar lessons, and I think from that point I have always loved music. The biggest part though, it comes from my dad. He has always supported me in my musical endeavors, whether it was seeing bands play where he was front row taking pictures of me, and I was like so embarrassed as a teenager. But he was always front and center at my shows, and he was always showing me music. We would always listen to music together in the car. Like some of my favorite childhood memories are going to the hardware store on a Saturday, and we would listen to 93.1 WXRT, Chicago's finest rock together. Or on Sunday mornings, Breakfast with the Beatles with Terry Hemmert. Those were some of my very formative early memories of listening to music and playing music. And to this day, my dad has a huge record collection. Whenever I give him a gift, it's always a record. And whenever I go home, we're always listening to music together. So I'm getting emotional. I love my dad. I know he's probably going to be watching this. Shout out to my dad. He's fed the music in me since I was a little kid. And I'm going to end it there because I think a lot of us who play music or even just love music, that started from somewhere, whether it be like friends when you were young, sharing music with each other, burning mix CDs or mixtapes for each other, going to concerts as a kid, like back when you didn't have like worries and responsibilities, like you were able to just enjoy music and enjoy life. And I think that all of us have carried that with us into adulthood and beyond. And Hearing new music is always very exciting. Getting new records is exciting. Going to see live music is exciting, and I don't think that'll ever change. So yeah, I got into music at a young age, and I've never stopped, and I think music transcends generations, and it transcends so many things. So on that note, I would like to thank you guys so much for submitting all your questions. A lot of really great questions. I would love to do this again. I'm sure I will do a part 2 at some point. But in the meantime, go check out my Patreon if you want to hear a little bit more. And I'm so excited to see what 2024 brings. I'm excited to make more videos and fix more amps. And thank you guys so much. I'll see you later. Cheers.